In today's Rambam, Hilchos Issurei Mizbeiach, Perek Daled, there's a halacha over here. He's like this. It's talking about the different types of the korbanos or behemoths that become possible to bring for a korban, the Mizbeiach. So one of them is hanevad, one that's served as an avodah zarah. If you serve a behemoth as an avodah zarah, that's also to bring the Mizbeiach. Zokir Rambam, Perek Daled halacha vav. Hanevad. Bein sha'avad shalei, bein shel chaveri. Whether one served his own animal or his chaver's animal, bein be'enes, bein berotzen, bein bezodin, bein beshgoga, doesn't matter in what form he was avid, bein lifnei hekdesh, bein lachar hekdesh, whether it was before it became hekdesh or after, harei zeh osur. This is osur to use for a korban. V'yira shipol bein mum kavua, v'yipodek bein kamesha b'yar. Okay, that's the halach. So if one serves an animal for avodah zarah, whether it's his, whether it's friends, etc. Zokti Raivet. Ben sha'oved shalei, ben sha'oved shel chaveri, Aleph Amar Avram, b'mesech avodah zarah ukmua shel chaveri b'she'osa ba ma'isa. In the Gemara Mesech avodah zarah, so there the Gemara said that we're talking about that when one serves his chaver's behemoth, so it only becomes osur when osa ba ma'isa. When not just he bowed to the animal, he didn't do anything, you have to actually do a maisa to the behemoth, to the animal, only then does it become osur. So it's when it's one's own animal, so just bowing to his own animal is enough to make it osur. But when it's his chaver's animal, it's not his, so then you'd have to do a maisa in order for it to become osur. That's the Ravid's Hasogya and the Rambam. So in other words, it's a big machlekes. A shaila is a person who serves his friend's animal. There's someone else's animals, and a person bows to it and doesn't do a maisa. Does that animal become Osher Mizbeiach or not Osher Mizbeiach? And that is a machlekes between the Rambam and the Ravid. The Rambam says that yes, no matter what, the animal becomes Osher Mizbeiach, even if it's someone else's, and even the Rambam doesn't make any stipulation that there needs to be a maisa. And the Ravid says that in the Gemara Shteit Anders, the Gemara says that there has to be a maisa done in order to make it Osher if it's someone else's animal. So what is the Yisayid Hadvarim? What's the Yisayid Machlekes? And I want to explain it with I think an important hakadama. There's really two issues. There's one issue is forget about someone else's animal. When one bows to their own animal, and doesn't do a maisa to the animal, just bows. What's the halacha? So if you take the Mizbeiach, take the Beis Hamikdash out of the equation, what's the halacha? A person bows to his own dog, his own cat, his own cow, his own animal. Does that animal become an avodah zarah? And the answer is no. The answer is it doesn't. Of course, you did an avodah, but the animal does not become an avodah zarah if you didn't do a maisa. And that's a halacha in Hilchas Avidas Kechovim in the Rambam Perek Ches halacha Aleph. The Rambam says, "Kol she'in beitfisas yad odom v'leyasohu odom." Anything that wasn't made by man. Afal pisha nevat harei muter bano. Even if one serves it, it's muter bano. Lefichach, he says, "Evdi kechovim evdim es hahorim es hagvois es heilonis anituim mitchiloson leperes es mayones es habehema harielu muter bano muter lechel es naperes veisa habehema." In other words, when one serves an animal, it's just an animal, a live animal that was never touched, it wasn't built. It's something that the Eibusha created, an animal or a tree or a body of water or a mountain, and one serves it, that does not become an avodah zarah unless you do a maisa in the goof of the thing that you're serving. So that is in guten mut when one serves his own thing. But here we have a chidush when it comes to avodah zarah. When it comes to the Beis Hamikdash, that the din is different, and that we learned also in today's Rambam in Perek Gimel halacha vov. A Perek earlier, the Rambam says talks about other things: hareva, hanirva, hamuktzal avodah zarah, vehanevat, something that was nevat, something that was served. Afal pishin mutarin ba'achila, as I said before, because it doesn't really become an avodah zarah. Harim psulin legabi hamizbeiach. It's possible for the mizbeiach shenemar ki mashchosum bahem. Anything that has an act of hashchosa becomes possible for the mizbeach. So the first thing you have to understand is that when it comes to the mizbeach, there's a big chidush legabe an avodah zarah, which is that when a person serves something even though that thing didn't become an avodah zarah, because it was ein b'tfisas yad adam, like a live animal. You serve one served a live animal, so it doesn't become an avodah zarah, and it's muter b'achila, it's muter b'hanah. Nevertheless, because of an avera was done with it, so for the mizbeach it's also. So that's important to understand. That's chidush number one in Hilchis Issurei Mizbeiach legabi disinyan. That versus for avodah zarah you have to do a ma'ase in the guf hadover to make it possible. In mizbeach you don't need a ma'ase in the guf hadover. That's the first halach. That's based on a Mishnah, Gemara, and Tmur. Then there's another issue, which is there's a halach of ein adam eser dover she'eni shalei. It's an additional issue, nothing to do with avodah zarah. But derech klal, the klal is that when one tries to aser someone else's thing, you can make someone else's things aser. In something that's connected that needs machshava. In other words, if you pour milk into someone else's meat, that's in gashmi, it's in shabbat ma'isa. So that, of course, it becomes treif. But let's say the one bows to someone else's thing and makes it into avodah zarah. Let's say a person has a nice sculpture in his house, and someone else comes and bows to it. So the halacha is in adam eser davar she'ein shalei. So Mela wouldn't become an avodah zarah. So now the shaila is, what happens when someone is mishtachave lebehemas chaveri? So if you're mishtachave lebehemas atzmacha, if one is mishtachave with his own behemoth, so we saw the chidush by avodah zarah is that even though mitzad halachas of avodah zarah normally you would have to do a ma'ase, but legabi the mizbeach, even if you don't do a ma'ase, still an avera was done with it, it's asur. Now, what's the story if one is mishtachave to another person's behemoth? Do we say an avera was done? Taken normally ein adam eser davar she'ein shalei, and normally in order to aser something that's not yours, you would have to do a ma'ase. But over here, since it's for the mizbeach, even with no ma'ase, it becomes asur. Just like one's own animal. The chiddush is a legami mizbeach. It's asur without a ma'ase. Al derech zeh, when one is mishvach with someone else's animal, so also it becomes asur for the mizbeach, even though no ma'ase was done. Or do we say no? The halacha of ein adam eser davar she'ein shalei, that stays by the mizbeach also. As long as it's not his, you can't aser someone else's thing to the mizbeach without doing a ma'ase. And that's the machlekes of the Rambam and the Ravid in halacha dalid, in Perek Dalid. In other words, is there the need for a ma'ase to aser someone else's animal for the mizbeach? So the Rambam Weistes holds that no, just like when it comes to the mizbeach, there's no need to have a ma'ase to aser your own animal, even though mitzad hilchas avodah zarah you would need a ma'ase. But for the mizbeach, as long as you did an avera, your animal becomes asur. So in the same way, someone else's animal, even though in regular mitzad hilchas avodah zarah, the meser davar she'ein shalei, whatever, but mitzad the specialty of legavoya lemizbeach, here the Rambam holds that adam eser davar she'ein shalei. I'm sorry, not eser. It doesn't become an avodah zarah, but legabe the mizbeach, it becomes asur. On the Rav Zakne, that the din of ein adam eser davar she'ein shalei never got lost. And as ein achanami, the Ravid is masking to the first chiddush that the Rambam says in Perek Gimel from the Gemara that for one's own animal, the chiddush is that it becomes aser for the mizbeach even without a ma'ase, unlike the halacha of avodah zarah b'chlal. But like Abby, the din of ein adam eser davar she'ein shalei, that if one bows to someone else's animal, so there's the halacha of ein adam eser davar she'ein shalei. And if he didn't do a ma'ase in the guf behemoth, it doesn't become aser legaveh. Al kolpanim, I hope I was clear. The nekudas hamachlekes between the Rambam and the Ravid is, does this din, the regular din of ein adam eser davar she'ein shalei, without doing a ma'ase l'peil, without doing a ma'ase in the dover, does that apply to make something aser from the mizbeach or not? The Rambam holds that when we're talking about an Isur legabi mizbeach, even if it's davar she'ein shaloi, it becomes aser. You don't need a ma'ase because the mizbeach is different. As long as an avera was done over here, so it becomes aser legabi hamizbeach. And the Ravid holds no, that even legabi hamizbeach, there does apply the din of ein adam eser davar she'ein shalei, unless you did a maisa in the guf habehema, and that stands as a machlekes the Rambam and the Raiva. No, so in the Makir Hadvarim Bemis, it's a sugi in Gemara in Zvachim Babikir and Avodah Zarah, and the Raiva Tain is that from the Gemara and Avodah Zarah, it comes out clearly that he's right, that you'd have to do a maisa in the guf habehema if one wants to be asked someone else's behema to the Mizbeiach. So I'm not now going to go into the Gemaras. That's all. There'll be an arichos. That's not the type of shir over here. But I just want to say that the Achrenim say the Sameach talks about it in his Pirush Shir and Rambam, and also in his Sefer Meshech Chochmah in the beginning of Chumash Vayikra. And Bemis already the Mara Aponim said it in the Yerushalmi, that they both say that it's a machlekes between Bavli and Yerushalmi. That in Sugyas HaBavli zogen ze that it's very evident like the Ravid says, and then the Lachamishna also is very strong over here. He doesn't understand what how the Rambam says halacha lefi asugi in the Bavli. Knows that in the Sugyas HaBavli it sounds like the concept of ein adam eser davar she'ein shalei applies to Issurei Gavei also Issurei Mizbeiach also. However, they say, and that Bemis is it's come out clear that in the Sugya in the Yerushalmi and Masechta Avodah Zarah, the same Sugya, the Sugya is talking different, and there it's quite clear that yesh leimar that there's a makom to say that legabe gavaya, legabe Isurim of the Mizbeach, there even davar she'ein shalei, that doesn't bother us. And it's Adam Eser davar she'ein shalei, legabe the Mizbeach. So Mela Zogen Zeh against side there, Sameach side of Maraponim, Andre Zogen Zechet, and the Maramakemis to bring others that say also that Lachere it's Machlekes, Bavli, and Yerushalmi, also in Sakabida Talmudus, in the Erech of Davar Shein Yishalei, he brings that it's a Machlekes between the Bavli and the Yerushalmi. If Legabi Mizbeach, you say the din of Ein Adam Eser Davar Shein Yishalei, that's Shita Harayvid and the Bavli, and Mela the only time the behemoth becomes Osir is if Asa Be Maisa, versus the Shita of the Yerushalmi, and the Rambam paskins that way, and so takes after the Kesef Mishnah says that all of them say that legabe to make something osir for the Mizbeach, there isn't a problem if it's ein shalei. Even if it's ein shalei, a person does make it osir. As I say, so it's machlekes Bavli Yerushalmi. It's Rambam Merayvet. Why did the Rambam here pass like the Bavli? No, zicher definitely giving a hasbar in the. No, but perhaps let's be moisef just one word. Maybe it's halderech hachidut, but to help understand Takeshitas Habavli. Shitas Rambam, which is Shitas HaYerushalmi, that when it comes to the Issurei Mizbeiach is Adam Eser Davar She'ein Shalei, that one could make that animal us if so the Chaver's animal osir for the Mizbeiach. The Chodesh Ein Shalei is a klal ein Adam Eser Davar She'ein Shalei. So Mustama the Pashut way of saying it is Lepel Nev an Avera was done. The Gamin Mizbeiach what's Negeis was an Avera done here. Doesn't matter if it was you, if someone else, an Avera was done. So it's just like the first Chidush, that a person can answer his own behemoth, even though it's in betfisas yad adam, because an avera was done. So that's someone else's. But for it, yesh l'chalik, takan avera was done, but it's someone else. How could you be poil in the animal that doesn't belong to you? That it should be usher from the mizbeach. It's not yours. In other meses over shein initially. Is that should come in meses zayin ashtikal hasbara in the following way. What's talking? Do you say that dover of ein adam eser dover she'ein shalei? Why talking not? What can I mention? Nicht aser in something that's not yours. So we already said before that doesn't apply to something that the Easter is made up of a ma'aseh gashmi, basar v'cholav. Of course, whether it's shalei or she'ein shalei, if you mix basar v'cholav, it becomes aser. The whole concept of ein adam eser dover she'ein shalei is the gabby ad Easter, that the chalesa Easter needs the machsheves of the one doing that. Does Akman that the machshava of a person can't affect someone else's thing? Found from the Rebbe in the Igris and Chilek Aleph, the long letter about how machshava is pale in the world. Dibur is pale, Legabi is Mishnayis Balpeh. So there, in one of the orders, the Rebbe says a word that a machshava of a person has no kesher to something that doesn't belong to him. The machshava is a davar pnimi; it's inside the person. Ma'aseh is a davar chitzeini. Even dibur in a way is a davar chitzeini. Machshava is within a person's head. My machshava has no kesher, no effect on something that belongs to someone else outside of myself. B'mila, that's the yesod of ein adam eser davar she'ein shalei. My machshava should have a peula on something outside of me. Das shenish geher. I'm wondering if we can trachten When we're talking about Mila da Alma, we're talking about the regular way in this world, in Yonim Gashmim, the way we see things. But in Ruchnius and Yonim, the Gavaya Ki'ilu, perhaps Machshava has an effect outside of ourselves also. Now, Begashmi is the way the world runs, it's an Elam HaMaisa. So B'meila, if you did it, you did it. Machshava, my head has no shaykhs to anything outside of me or anyone outside of me. But perhaps there's a makim to say that when it comes to Beis Hamikdash, Legavaya, for a Mizbeach, for the Korban, over there could be a Isyachsus and there could be a Chshivus to Machshevas Odom, even to that which is outside of him. And B'meila kemen zogen as Odom Eser Dover She'eni Shalei Legabi HaMizbeach Legabi Legavaya. What could be a makir or some dugmois? I want to bring a couple of dugmois taken from the Rebbe's Torah and Fashidna Erter, that when it comes legavaya, when it comes legabi the Eibishter, machshava takes on a whole different kayach, much more so than it is down here. So I'll give three dugmois and we'll try to be mekatzer over here. So one dugma, it's a sicha the Rebbe and Chilek Yud Aleph Yisrei, and there's a whole sicha legabi melacha of Shabbos. When it comes to Shabbos, there is Maisa, the Iker, the Lamates Mochas are in Maisa. Then there is Ladab Vidaber Dover, the Rabbana were Maisa in Yom of Shabbos of Dibur. And then there is Machshava, which it says, the Rebbe brings, that when it comes to Machshava, it's only an union of Midas Hachsidus. Midas Hachsidus, it's Haki Yerushalmi also. Maisa B'chosi Idechot, Sheyasal L'tayil, B'karmi, B'Shabbos, V'rosh Pirza, V'choshav, L'gedre, B'matzah Shabbos, Omar Heil, V'choshafti, L'gedra, Ini Gedra Iloms. It's a midas chassidus lizor gami machsheves meloch. The Rebbe explains the whole sich. The Kudas Advarim was like this. The Iker of the Iker Shvisa Shabbos, because the Eibusher was Shabbos from making the world. The Eibusher made a world. How do we make things in Maisa B'Peil? Through our Maisa Keach Hasiyah. So Mila Keach Hasiyah, that's the Isur Derais. Dibur is the Isur Derabbanan. For the Eibusher created the world with Dibur. And by us, Dibur also something goes out of us and affects a Maisa to come forth from the Dibur. So the Rabbanan were Mesiv Dibur. Machshava says the Rebbe, Machshava in this world, Machshava has no Pa'ula. Machshava is within a person, has no Pa'ula outside of himself. So Mela, there's no Makim, not for Yisrael, not for the Rabbanan. Says Rebbe, Midas Chassidus is Lizar from Machshava also. For us, Chassidus is a person who he acts like the Eibishter. Chosid is Dovuk B'Kodesh Baruch Hu. Because since Misarad Veikus B'Drochov Mideisav, so Mela by the Eibishter Machshava is pale. The Eibishter created with his Machshava also, it says Al Ministimim. So Mela, a person who wants to act in a way like the Eibishter acts, but that in the Midas Chidus Hadbik B'Drochov. So then he's Zorb Machshava also, because by the Eibishter Machshava is like a pale Mechutz Latzmei also. So interessant in Mokir that in the Eibishter's world, in other words, from the Eibishter's perspective, Machshava is pale. In Elam Hazak Gashmi not. Tzrik zu unserer Sugi kann schon sein Legabi Legavoya. So Machshava can pale sein Mechutz Latzmei. That's one makir. Zog noch a makir. So sichen lekude sichas a chelik tasser a all mas legabi the and nidachas. And there's a Rambam that says legabi and nidachas that if you do tshuva, the tshuva helps. What do you mean tshuva doesn't help legabi bezin shalmat? So the Rebbe Tutuf, it's a long sichen lekude sadvarim. The tshuva helps to make them ois tzibur and into a yochid. And there's the ena shebir nidachas als tzibur. And if you do shuvas, you become a tzibur, and then they're nanash ki yichid makit tzibur. That's an akud. Frank Rebbe referred even legabi that in. How could bezin shalmata paskin? Bezin shalmata is not machshavin of tshuva. Im ledayin al mashain of royis. So mela, how could they be machshav the tshuva of the person to make him ois from tzibur to yochid? And the akud is, again, I'm being very very bekitzer. The akud is that to become from a tzibur to a yochid, that's a in ruchni. The concept of Sibur in Yeruchni, Shaychoni Be'ayid, Mitzad Nefoshes. It's in Yeruchni. Mitzad and Yeruchni, so Machshava helps. In other words, in Gashmi, so in your regular halach is high, you've potted this, that. That's an Indian in Gashmi. It's not about Gashmi. Over there, the Machshava, what goes on Machshava Sodom has no Kech and best. Mashenkin Legabi, this Indian, which is all in Yeruchni, yet Sibur, Nishkin Sibur, that's a Ruchni Sikirin. So even though Shuv is Beleva Odom, Leva Odom, Machshava Sodom, has a Pu'ula, Venseretzich Legabi Adover Ruchni. One more makir. There is the sikh in Chilek Chavches, Parshas Shlach, the whole ma'aseh of the Mekei Sheitzim. The Rebbe brings there the Marsha that says, why is Mekei Sheitzim? Why did he decide to Mechal Shabbos? Because he wanted to do an Avera that really is not doing an Avera. Shabbos is a din Melacha Shetzrich Leguf is Chayiv. It's not Tzrich Leguf. It's not Chayiv. So maybe the Mekei Sheitzim he wasn't interested in the eitzim. Maybe he wasn't really Eber Shabbos. But he was killed, and the Eber had to kill him. The answer is, Bezdin Shalmata killed him because Bezdin Shalmata sees what he did, and he did it be'efin that it looked like a melacha tzricha legufa. So therefore, the chiyuv in Torah is not to be mischashev with machshavte. We're mischashev only with the ma'aser, the way we see it, the way he acted it out. He acted it out in the way that was tzricha legufa. Aber klapi shmaya galia legabi the Eibishter, not the way the Eibishter says Bezdin Shalmata as the paskin. Legabi the Eibishter alone, v'etzer doch was belevo. Kumtes and misad machshavte he wasn't ever. So we see again that the halacha lepeil he's chayiv misa because halacha lepeil paskins the way it is ma'aser bepeil, but the machshava klapi shmaya galia is an emes of machshava. And the mele klapi shmaya, so the inyan is nechshav the way it is b'machshav. The mele taka wasn't ever that big. So from all these dugmois we see that in a chanami, when it comes to regular halacha, machshava has no pu'ula, and that's actually the reason, as we said from the Rebbe in the letter in the Giskedish, that in Adam because your machshava has no pull on someone else's inyan. Can aber sein as does the pnimistic beer in them shitas ha-Yerushalmi. The Rambam passes like the Yerushalmi that when it comes to the inyan of Issurei Mizbeiach, dozok men shein as if he did an avera, he was mishtach with a behemoth chaveri. Le'oso b'maisa. B'meila taka, it's the inyan doesn't become usur. The animal doesn't become usur b'chlal because it's another mesa davar shein shalei. Aber the gabby the Mizbeiach, da hat shein machshava ich ya peula. Mizbeiach shein legaveya. Legaveya hat machshava ya peula. Like we saw in the Digmois that we said. And the Mela legabi gaveya is Adam Eser davar shein shalei. Kach yesh leimar b'derech efshar.